Hey everyone. Okay, so I'm going to talk about superposition of parts. And typology in the human mind. I'm going to go into um, basically what superposition is in other circumstances and show that superposition is also in typology. So at first, I'm going to talk about. I wrote metaphors here. I guess they're not all metaphors. They're all superpositions. The first one is more of a metaphor. Um, I was weird about it. Okay, so we have colors, currents, waves, what I saw in the economy, quantum physics, and then what I'm seeing in typology. And then at the end, I have a little bit of a baby blast on three topics here. I didn't want to make a whole separate video, so I have the masculine feminine spectrum, the responsibility definitions that the community and I were working on to try to figure out what the functions are, and then my current stance and investigation on socionics. So let's get into it. So yeah, color. It's just I wrote just a metaphor because color is subjective based on our eyes, the way our eyes worked. But we can. It's a good metaphor to try to understand what superposition is doing. So in every case, you can relate it back to this. So I mean, I guess on a TV screen, you have the three colors: blue, green, and red. Um, when you add them up, you get the picture, right? So you can actually separate them up, look at the picture just in green, look at the picture just in red, look at the picture just in blue, and then the addition, it's like the overlay. That's what superposition is. It's like it's an addition kind of overlay, and you get the picture on your screen, right? So here's the thing, this is with pigmentation. So let's say you see brown, okay? I'm seeing brown. Well, what made the brown? What actually made the brown? I don't know. Sorry, I just had a knock on the door. I believe I was talking about the brown. So what goes into the brown is two colors, and you don't know what two colors are from the brown. You can't really separate it out, right? And so this is the convergence of superposition, where like you end up with a result, and you're trying to figure out what went into that result. So three people can see the same brown, and they can all say, okay, these things is what made the brown. Well, how do you know, right? So this is also a very good analogy for typology. If you see a behavior, well, what caused that behavior, right? Was it Fe? Was it Ti? Was it, yeah, right? You're seeing brown. We're all seeing the same brown, but what added up to make that brown? What added up to make that behavior? Because that behavior is the sum of parts, right? The third one picture here, you can see it's useful for like if you want to make a color. How do you make the color? Well, you got to add up these three colors. It's like a instructional superposition. Let's add up these things to make this thing, right? So this also you'll see in typology. I'll get to it later, but if you see two different behaviors, you know it adds up to a third one. It's like there's like an additional chart. It's just in the same way. Okay. So in circuits, we also have superposition. I'm going to do this really briefly. So basically current has to travel in a loop. Whatever current goes in has to come out. It's got to be a solid current in a loop. And what happens is when you want to find the current in the third loop, you can solve in the third section, you can solve each independent loop and then add them up to see where you see the R3 in the middle. Well, you got to add up I1 and I2 to find the current there, right? That's on the left. You treat just for information, you treat the voltage sources as short circuits, and on the right, you treat the the amperes current sources as open circuits. And you see on the right side, the circuit A is really an addition of circuit B plus circuit C. You have to, if you want to solve circuit A, you really want to break it down into circuit B, solve circuit B, break it down into circuit C, and then add the two up to find out what's actually going on in circuit A, right? So this is a way to solve circuit A. Waves as well, you see on the top left, there's two waves coming at each other. They'll add up when they're next to each other, and then they'll go back down, sort of thing. That's superposition. They're adding up. You can see there's constructive interference and destructive interference. The green and the blue add up to be the red. So you can see it gets higher when it's constructive, and destructive, it becomes zero, right? Again, at the top right, wave 1, 2, and 3, you get this resultant picture of a wave, which I've talked about the Fourier transform in the past in relation to typology, actually. And what the Fourier transform does is it takes whatever picture, whatever wave, whatever is going on, and then you separate it out into the frequency domain, and you can see what waves are adding up to create that picture, to create that wave, right? And so really what it is doing is it's taking this one thing and then simplifying it by seeing what parts are inside. What's the superposition? When I was investigating the economy, trying to solve for the problems in the economy, I found I was running into problems because money just represented too many things. Money is actually a superposition of many things. And it's not just money. Money buys things. So the resource that you're buying is actually a superposition of a bunch of things, right? So let's like take like an orange, for example. So the orange, it requires land to grow. It requires land for a certain amount of time. So I took a currency to solve for land. I took square footage or square meterage or whatever times a certain amount of time in order to find the value of a product in terms of land. It obviously takes a certain amount of hours of work, and it obviously takes some resources. And the last one is value. I had to add that in later because money represents perceived value of people. It's not an actual physical thing. It's just if people like it or not. Now I can see, let's say we have two cars. They both take the same amount of land. They both take the same amount of work. They both take the same amount of resources. One of them works better, so it'll have a higher value just because it works better. It's more functional. The other thing is, well, let's say they both work the exact same. One of them, people like it more. So it has more of this value sort of currency. So this is what I was really investigating, to try and simplify money, to solve each one independently, to try to investigate the economy. Quantum physics, we have superposition of Schrodinger's cat here in the top left. You have the cat is both alive and dead at the same time until you look in the box, right? So that's a superposition of states. You have to treat the cat as both if you ever want to do any calculations with it until you look, right? To figure out what the probability is that he's alive or the probability that he's dead, right? So this is a superposition of states. On the right side, we have Feynman diagrams. You'll notice that every single one of these Feynman diagrams has the same two inputs and the same outputs, right? But what the difference is what's going on inside. What's taking those inputs and causing it to be outputs. Now, it could be any one of those things, right? And we run into problems if we say, okay, it's just one of them. No, it's not. We can't do that. If we look at it, we'll be like, okay, this is the process that happened, right? But if we don't look at it, the math doesn't work out unless we consider that each one happened at the same time, right? So it's really a superposition. They all happened at the same time with their associated probabilities. And that's how the math will work out. So unless we're looking, obviously. But so this is like another idea where you have to do the superposition in order to solve it. We don't know which one it was. It was all of them at the same time. Okay, so let's get into typology. I talked a little bit. So at the very bottom here, we have behavior equals brown. So we see this behavior that is brown, but what went into the brown, right? So you'll see on the right side, I have this same thing. It's this kind of overlay. You see the legend at the top right where play sits over top of each one of the quadra: play, blast, sleep, consume. So the animal, that's the superposition. That's where the animal lies, right? So if you see that someone is using O, E, and DE, they're using play. If you're seeing that they're playing, then you know they're using O, E, and DE, right? Let's say we type someone with who's objectively using objective feelings, all right? They're objectively focused, they're tribe above self, for example, and they're a feeler. Well, then we know that's FE. That's how, and that's the advantage of objective personality, when they're not saying, hey, let's type FE, let's try to recognize FE. No, let's look at the parts. Let's look at what adds up to make FE. We'll figure that out, and then we'll know that it added up to FE, right? And so that's the beauty of superposition in OP. There's a lot more that I didn't write down here, but just a couple more examples. So you have consume and blast. So if you add up consume and blast, you can create sleep or play, right? It's the animals. Or if you add up sleep and play, you can create consume or blast. So just an example for consume and blast. Let's say I want to consume what I'm saying. So I'm asking myself questions, answering my own questions, processing my own information. That's sleep, right? Sleep is just asking yourself the right questions and answering yourself, right? Or play is the same thing. It's pinging off the tribe. It's consuming from someone else and blasting to someone else back and forth at a very high rate. That's play, right? So when you see someone in play mode, well, are they really in play mode, or are they doing consume and blast at a high rate, right? What's going on there? If you see someone in any one of those animals, you could be making a mistake and thinking that they're using that animal, but they're actually just using the other two neighboring animals, right? That's where so that's why I think the double activated animal is so strong, because they're able to use that animal as it is and dive into what adds up to make that animal at the same time. Okay, let's say I'm seeing somebody, I'm seeing that they're feminine with the tribe, and I'm seeing they're masculine for thinking. Automatically, I know that's the FETI axis, right? Because that feminine DE and the masculine thinking don't add up together. They don't. It can't be masculine thinking with the tribe because it's a feminine tribe. So I know automatically that it's FE, right? And I know that it's TI. So these are some examples of superposition in typology. So it's something that really helps people type. If you don't look at, like, there's a lot of reasons why they could be doing this behavior. You could interpret this behavior in very many different ways. So just to give an example, let's say you see somebody is fighting against someone who's controlling them, right? For example. Well, is that because they're OE? They like the freedom? Is that because they're trying to control the other person? They're having a control struggle, right? Is that because they want to show their independence? They want to show their DI? I don't know. It's just an example, but I mean, like, a lot of behaviors can have many different things that go into that behavior. They can add up, they could have different sources. So keeping superposition in mind is really helpful when you're typing someone. Okay, so how does OP divide up? Because OP says everyone can do everything, right? If you want to see if someone's a thinker or a feeler, well, you're going to see them doing both, always, right? The question is, what are they doing on the front end, being responsible for in the here and now on the front end, and what void are they leaving on the back end? And so if someone's doing all of their thinking now, they're going to have to do the feeling on the back end, right? If someone's balanced between thinking and feeling now, so on the back end, they'll also be balanced, right? So everyone can do everything. If you add up, if you look at someone's life over time, you'll see them doing everything. But the question is, which one is in a savior state, which one is on the front end, and which one is in a demon state, which one is on the back end, right? So yeah, front plus back equals everything. Superposition leads to difficulty in typing. Think of all the possible right? So before you think single one, you say, hey, I know this is tribe above self. Before you do that, look at all of the causes, everything that could happen. It could be many different things, this behavior. Single them all out and look over time what happens. So, and the other thing is, in OP, there's still a lot more decoupling to do. There's still a lot of things. We're getting down to the bare bones because we're starting to see the quantum effects. Like if someone's too certain in one area, they're becoming more uncertain in the other. If you're doing too much sensing, then you're not doing enough intuition. That's a quantum effect. That's one at the expense of the other. You can't have both simultaneously. That's a dichotomy. That's that kind of effect, right? So so you can't really decouple something more than that. But there's still decoupling left to do within that, right? And then again, developed people are going to be harder to type because they're going to be doing both on the front end and both on the back end, right? So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So my baby blast. Okay, so Anita Ashland a while back was talking about people maybe having baby masculine, like she felt her masculines were both very feminine, even though they were both masculines. And some people might have big masculines, right? And I've noticing this is a lot in Jung's psychological types. He talks about sensing being more masculine and intuition being feminine, or thinking being masculine and feeling being feminine, right? And so also in the results, you start seeing, hey, there's way more masculine sensing people out there than masculine intuition out there. What's going on, right? What's happening with that? Why are more people like, it's not by a huge margin, but it's still by a little bit, right? So I started thinking there might be an absolute maximum, an absolute level of masculinity in each of the functions, right? And so it could be on a spectrum. So your chances of being masculine and sensing are higher. But if your intuition is masculine, and your sensing is feminine, then your intuition can be more masculine than sensing. And that's really what I felt that OP is tracking. Which one is more masculine? Which one is deferring to what, right? Which one is moving to what? Which one is solid? So like I've seen people with masculine intuition and masculine sensing that are just way more masculine on the sensing, but there's not moving on either, right? I've seen people with feminine on both, but their sensing is still masculine. They're just way more movable on both relative to my masculine sensing, right? Which relative to my masculine intuition, they're movable, right? So when you're comparing within self, one is more masculine, but when you're comparing with the whole tribe and the whole spectrum, then also you're comparing between the masculine sensing of one person and the masculine sensing of another, right? So this is why it's leading me to believe that there's this sort of thing going on underneath. Again, speculative. I just wanted to put it out there. Okay, I started working on these definitions with the tribe. This is really not my definitions. I added in this extra text at the beginning for the definitions. Just it's like flavor text because people didn't really understand what I was getting at. But so I'm going to link in the description a link to this if you want it in text form. But basically what happened was I went out to the tribe to try to, after I wrote down my own definitions, I went out to try to work through them, right? Now, what I got was, okay, so this is what I got for TI, for example. I showed this to other TI users, and I didn't need to show it to very many. Every single TI user I showed it to that both OP identified as TI and I also identified as TI. So I was I was taking myself as an additional cross-check to verify what OP was doing based on the interviews I was doing. So anyways, I went to TI users and they said, that perfect, don't change a thing. I went to only 2. I didn't have to go very far. I didn't spend a lot of time on TI because it was just, this is just what I wrote on my own sort of thing. FE, I got pretty bad actually. Megan Lavoda helped me out with this. I went to a couple other FE users. There seems to be kind of a difference between feminine and masculine, but this is sort of something that they got to. And Lindsay Lijo actually helped me figure out, and I had it almost perfect. She just helped me narrow it down a little bit more. SE, I also did pretty well. I had it almost perfect. But I went to Taylor from Flow State. He added something, and then I went to a feminine SE, and he added something that actually, when I went back to Taylor from Flow State, he said, I've got no problem with that change. That's weird, right? Usually I have problems with, like, I thought it was perfect. He changed something. I still think it's perfect. I don't have a preference between this one or the other one. And this other guy clearly, the feminine SE, clearly had a preference between one of them over the other. And so I thought, okay, well, that's the right triangulation there. But that also shows me that some of these definitions might still be flawed because I didn't ask enough people. I didn't work on them with enough people. And over time, I'm assuming I'm going to get better. So the link in the description is going to be the most current one for when you're seeing this video. FI was hard because FI, no one really knew how to, none of the FI users knew how to put it into words. This is what I got out of them. All of them sort of agreed with it. They said, yeah, if you have to put it in words, if you have to write it like this, then yeah, that's fine. Now, ironically, TE, I had disagreement. It's the function known for agreeing, but ironically, they didn't agree. Feminine TE and masculine TE were kind of different. That leads me to question a little bit if TE is being typed properly, but it also could be typed properly, and just there's such a huge difference between the masculine and feminine aspects of it. SI was a surprise for me what came out of it. I'm still adding to it. I'm still changing it. I got it. I got one aspect of it right, but I didn't get everything. NE, for example, is something that there's a huge difference between ENFPs and ENTPs. That's the difference. That the ENTP description, the NFP says, I don't even know what that means. And the ENFP description, the ENTP says, yeah, that makes NE seem like a little weak or like you're using negative information, like negative words in there, like uncertainties, for example. So I sort of mesh the two together. I'm not confident with my NE description here. It's been accepted, so it's kind of in the right direction. So anyways, I want to thank the tribe for all of their help. These are not my definitions. Actually, these belong to everyone who helped and everyone else who is going to continue helping to refine them down. Now, when I came into Socionics, okay, so first of all, Mitchell Newman has a channel where he's starting to compare Socionics and OP. He did a very great first video. The link is in the description. I suggest you check it out. He's going to keep doing more. I hope he does more. He's NIDOM, so he's planning on doing more. I hope he actually ends up doing it because it was really well done. Flow State, I know, is also investigating the crossover between the two, and I might start doing more work with him. I would love to do more work with everyone on this. Now, I had an issue with Jack over this whole thing based on his reaction video where he basically used, I don't know, from my perspective, he was using horrible logic. He was dancing around issues. He was making me look bad for like saying this was my intention and then, which it wasn't, and then taking the opposite side, which was my intent. Like, I don't know, he was doing the whole thing. So, I mean, I did a similar reaction video to him. I left it unlisted. I don't want drama on my channel. I don't want that kind of thing on my channel. But anyways, I have it. I'm going to put it in the description if anyone actually wants to see it. It's very embarrassing on my side, just how, how insensitive I am to him. But at the same time, it's, if you want to see how Jack's arguments get destroyed and how he argues and how he's very, if you just want to see how I tear holes into his logic, it's not against Socionics. It's just against really the way that he's working. So, I mean, up to you. Anyways, bad superpositions now in Socionics. So when I was investigating, this is just one thing I was going over with OTIM, just on one website that was recommended to me from a bunch of people in the Socionics community. There, just so you know, there's a lot of different schools of Socionics, a lot of different communities, a lot of different people, a lot of contradictions between the schools. There's even different models. There's Model A and Model G. So this is from Model A. It's from WikiScion. And I just saw that, like, a lot of this stuff is doing the superposition stuff wrong, from my opinion. They're looking at the brown and they're talking about the brown, right? Well, just as a point of reference, when I did my description of TI and I went and asked people, no one underlined anything, no one highlighted anything. Everyone was like, that's right, just keep going. I didn't need to ask a lot of TI users because every single one I asked said perfect. So for me, I don't know if I've labeled it right. I don't know if this is actually TI, but it's what I'm doing. It's what I'm responsible for. So that's my function. I don't know if that's TI. I just know that's me, right? And I just know that the other TI users that I asked, that's them, right? That's all I know. So, but here, this is not the same. This is not what I am. This one here, it's captured a lot of what I do, but it's not. It's miscapturing. So just me tearing into this one description. Now, this is the only one I really have authority to look into because I'm not using any of the other functions. I have an understanding of them. I can tear into them based on my understanding, but it would never actually hold much weight until someone from that function actually looks into it. So I'm going to go through it really quick. TI is generally associated with the ability to recognize logical consistency and correctness. Yeah, I do that. I feel like I have that ability. I have an issue with the word ability because I feel everyone has that ability to recognize logical consistency and correctness. Like, what? Who doesn't have that, right? And Socionics is using the 8-function model. Everyone has that ability, of course. Where does it lie? But yeah, I feel like that is my primary ability. Why not? Sure. But I mean, just because I have that ability doesn't mean that I'm TI. And also, I don't recognize it as an ability. I recognize TI as something else that if I'm doing it enough, I will get that ability, right? And that's the difference. Here I have organized systematic and conceptual understanding. Yeah, I organize conceptual understanding, but not everyone does. So I have an issue with this. Like this is not what TI is in its essence. See logical connections between things. Sure, we see logical connections. I like that. I highlighted it, including logical similarities, differences, and means of, here we go, instinctive feelings of validity. So I feel like I have instinctive feelings of validity, symmetry, and even beauty, right? So again, symmetry and beauty, what are you talking about, right? There is a lot of beauty in logic, right? So when I was back in high school, I went to this pretty harsh military school for a year. I was in And, you know, I never liked school. I never saw any value in school. School was just teaching me BS from my perspective. None of it mattered, or none of it had this symmetry and beauty to it, until I got into a physics class in high school. And as soon as I got into this physics class, I remember sitting on a test and just being in awe of the beauty of how you can analyze, it's just a simple ball flying through the air in two ways and come to the same answer. You can analyze it using energy, completely different equations, or you can analyze it using trajectory and time, speed and stuff. And then when you analyze it that way, you come to another conclusion. How long is the ball in the air, for example? So you come to the same conclusion using both ways of looking at it. And for me, that's a logical consistency. That's beauty in that way, right? And so there is beauty in the logic, but you know, I mean, okay, I can see the beauty. Great. If I don't see the beauty, am I not using TI, right? Believing that a sense of internal certainty is necessary for, yeah, I don't know, internal certainty. I don't think I need internal certainty. I don't believe that. What you know, to these, okay, so based on their own experience, again, my own experience, that could be SE, that could be SI. Why am I basing things on experience, right? Why can't I base things on theory, on theoretical things? So I don't think that's innate to TI. Otem, when we were looking through this together, he said this was just a minefield. It's just like, so many things here are good, but so many things here are just off from what I'm using. As opposed to relying on external authorities for knowledge. So here, I highlighted this because I agree. I don't rely on external authorities for knowledge, which they use only as a last resort, right? So I'll only go to an authority to get something if I get stuck, I guess. But I would always look to my own logic and my own, right? And for me, this is just anti-TE, right? But now I'm not saying TE always go to authorities or whatever, but TE is playing more of the spectrum game. Who knows who's smarter? Who knows this the best? Let's listen to them. That sort of game, right? Where TI is just arrogant and says, I don't care who knows this the best. I know this the best. I'm going, or I have the ability to know this the best. I'm going to use my, right? It's complete arrogance. But yeah, so like this, I identify as, yeah, I prefer this over this. No problem. That's TE. They also have to see overly pragmatic views as shallow. TE again. Yeah, overly pragmatic is shallow. Great that it works. But I'm not going to sit around all day and look at the best way to, I don't know, to clean my coffee machine. I'm just going to try it out, you know. It's overly pragmatic. I'm going to look at, anyways. But yeah, limit. And another thing is, just because, let's take Einstein, for example, everyone takes him as some kind of authority, right? Everything he said has been correct up until now, but he says a few things that maybe were wrong. I don't know. Just because he said them, it doesn't mean he's right, right? And so that's basically how TI feels. It's like, I don't care what the consensus is. I don't care what this genius said, right? I don't care that Sean Carroll, this genius, is out there talking about his many worlds theory and just looking like an idiot. I don't care. I'm not going to take his many worlds theory. I might take his idea of energy and how mass and energy warp space-time, or his understanding of that, but I'm not going to take his many worlds theory, for example, right? So I'm not looking at him as an authority. And redundant information as well. Again, that's Brown. What do you mean by redundant information? So intuitives are going to be like, okay, redundant information is too much sensory. I got enough sensory. You don't need to keep giving me sensory, right? Like all of these examples I've given, the intuitive might have been like, okay, I got what superposition is on the first slide. Why did you need to include circuits? Why did you need to include waves? Why did you need to include all of this extra stuff? I got it already. It's too much sensory, right? So that's redundant information for them. Redundant information for me is, as a TI user, I already came to a decision. I already have all the information, right? I already came to a decision. I already came to a conclusion. Now someone's going to come to me and they're going to be like, oh, what about this piece of information? And I say, that piece of information does not change the logical structure. that piece of information fits into the logical structure. So that's redundant information. And someone who keeps coming with extra, more and more things and are unable to resolve the contradictions on their own and coming to me to resolve those contradictions for them, that for me is the redundant information. So again, these types of definitions, starting in socionics, I'm having trouble consuming the data because it's a minefield. So I'm thinking that I will keep doing this. I will keep looking. I'll look more into the theory, less of the definitions. I'll keep my own definitions. Like I'll keep these definitions for now, because for me, they're much more accurate when I'm looking to socionics. But I'll use these to sort of see how their theories work and their more advanced theories and calculations work. Anyways, that's an update. Check out Mitchell Newman's channel. Check out whatever. Have a good one, everyone. Take care.